previous speaker, Gidon Sar, noted exactly what I'm going to be talking about. We tend to look at our enemies from outside, and they're called Iran or whatever they're called. We also have dangers and sensitivities that we at home that we need to watch out for. And so in the contexts of in-depth trends, I did a little bit in-depth digging using the tools that the previous speaker mentioned, and I think I'll give you a few scoops about the state of it. Josephus, the well-known Josephus who wrote the book on the war of the Jews, he said, you don't have to fight the Jews, they'll kill each other. Sadly, he turns out to have been right. Here we can see, it hasn't come up, I see. Here it is. We see the results of a study I did in honor of this conference, in which I did this 10 years ago for the first time. I asked them, I'm going to read you the names of all the parties and tell me for each party what your feelings are. Do you like it very much? Do you not like it, or not so, or hate it? Red is hate, blue is support or love. You can see that the hatred is screaming to the heavens, and here are the numbers. We can see 126% of hate, and as opposed to 52% love. And if we compare the two opposites, we'll see that in the state of Israel, 2018, after 70 years, there are 428 percentages of hatred among us. We hate this one and that one and this one and that one and all the parties and so on and so forth, as opposed to love that's only 255%. So Josephus was right after all. And we see this almost every day in the arguments amongst ourselves, all the people who are trying to dictate things to others, and hate can kill. We saw Rabin, and he's not the only one. But I saw fit, in terms of scientific truth, I wanted to show you the four parties where the love is a little bit greater than the hate. We see it about the and we see it about the Likud, and we see it about Kulanu, and we see Orly Levy's new party, which doesn't have a name yet. Nobody's gotten a chance to hate it yet. This is a national threat, and so Josephus was right. I'll move on to another subject. It has an interesting history. 10 years ago, I went to India. And while I was in the air, I read the Times of India, and I found something very challenging for a person like myself. There were the results of a survey held in Eastern Asia in a number of countries, and the people were asked, if you could be born a second time, in what country would you want to be born and live? And I said, wow, I know I have to do that same survey in Israel. I just have to tell you, though, in India, 95% said only in India, because, they have all kinds of unique aspects. It's difficult not to be from India. The Chinese said 40% outside India. Communism wasn't so simple enough, and they were honest enough in the survey to say so. And I knew that I had to do the same survey here in Israel. The answer that I got, and I did it for this conference, 34% of the population of the state of Israel told me this week, we would prefer to be born somewhere else if possible. I asked where, and we saw that 6%, not millions, said the US, Canada 3%, Switzerland 2.6%. Britain, of course, is misspelled here. I apologize for the mistake here, 2.4%. And 1.3% either Australia or Germany. And the rest were distributed in various other small countries, less than 1%. But together it was 34%. So I can tell you that in the previous survey 2 or 3 years ago, it was 37%. So we're talking about a third of the population, more than a third of the population of the State of Israel. And of course, the question regarding all those who said they didn't want to be here, we asked them why. And when I asked 3 years ago, last time, the first answer was because it's dangerous here, there are wars here, some of us, we want to have children, this isn't a place to have children. The second reason was for economic reasons. At that time, they said, we feel that we are weak economically, and no one cares. 33% of those answered that. Perhaps you don't know or you're not aware, in Israel, about 34% of the entire population of the households define themselves as weak to poor economically. And the third reason I heard 2 years ago, because we've lost our culture. Our culture has been cheapened. All the different cultures, academic culture, on the road, and let's see what happened now. 45% spoke about the economic situation. And we're talking about the weaker socioeconomic levels where the situation is becoming worse and they feel they're not being helped enough. 45% of those 37%. The second reason is the character of the state. I'll get into that a little bit more deeply, but that's very similar to that comment that we've lost our culture. The third reason is the matter of security. We mentioned that already. We live in a dangerous country. And only a small percentage said all kinds of other reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, the character of the state, we are vulgar, there's racism, there's too much religion, there's rifts among the people, and corruption. I didn't make up any of those words. The questions that we asked were open questions. People, each of them, and said what they said, and we divided them up into the various groups. We're looking here, ladies and gentlemen, about a very serious situation, because in order to fly planes and shoot cannons, to do everything we need to do to stop our enemies, we need healthy children and healthy citizens to serve in the army and to be in all those places that give us strength and resilience and security. And the results. We can see a lot of different reasons. We can see that when we are divided and rifted, this has a political expression. There are 13 different parties right now in Israel, or lists as they're known. And even if we include those who have declared, and we're starting to do surveys to see how many seats they're going to get in the next election, that's 13, and one more that I know is on the way. So every aspiring leader who thinks things are not being done exactly as he would done, he establishes his own party or list. And the result is 13 parties. And by the way, we see that there are a lot of generals in these parties, and that's understandable because the subject of security is always a dominant one. But there are a lot of things here that can harm our national security. And there's the issue of integration of all the multicultural groups that we have here. And we see all that hatred that we saw, the percentages. And this situation enables relatively small groups to strengthen their isolation alongside extreme demands that if you don't do what we want, we will break up the coalition. So if just a small number of people can stop transportation on the, Shabbat, if we're talking about the ultra-Orthodox, and that's exactly what happens. And there are arguments, and in some cases we even see violence, and we see this in Jerusalem especially. And we see, for example, the survey about IDF service and the threats to break up the coalition and funding given to all kinds of groups, and the Arab community has been given their own separate school system in the spirit of Islam, and that guarantees that more than 35% of the Arab population, and this is based on a survey, say they don't know enough Hebrew. So what's left for them to be? The drawers of water and the choppers of trees at the lowest level. And the same is true of the ultra-Orthodox. They should have made national school systems and then have afternoon schools or whatever. I lived in the United States. I had children there. So they studied in public school, and because I am a Jew and I wanted them to keep their identity, and they went to a Talmud Torah when? In the afternoon on Sundays. And they were Americans and Jews. We must put an end to this. And one of the things I found, I said, let's do something to decrease the number of parties in Israel. America, with 330 million people, has only 2.5 parties. Go through the whole enlightened world, all the countries of the OECD, you see 2-point-something parties. We need to reach a situation when we don't have more than 2 to 4 parties or entities, and it will force people to unite around the main ideas, and there are minor demands. So what? Everyone will draw the state in the direction of their own crazy demands. I don't know what you think, but 35% of the people of Israel said, let's do that. Let's make a situation where the separation among us and all the things that my lecture is talking about. 56% of people are in favor of having fewer parties. I did a survey among the Arab population because I said we know about the Arab population, and I at Geocartography, we work a lot with the Arab population in municipal planning, economic subjects, social, political issues, and they're now a new city is being built called Tantura. We're among the planning team, so I know what I'm talking about when I say I talk about Arabs. And 4 years ago, approximately, I opened a large conference in Shfarayam about the future real estate of the Arab population, and I did a study in advance of that, and some good friends I have in the Arab population, some Arabs and some Muslims and some Christians, and they said to me, Avi, you have to check something. What would happen if we, the Arabs, set up a new party that would champion the following things? First of all, to remove the existing political leadership, because it's never said a good thing about the state of Israel. It's only negative leadership. It only cares about Palestine, but it doesn't take care of our needs, what we need in our towns, economy, culture, jobs, preventing crime, and they listed all those things. And we also want to be loyal to the state of Israel. We don't hate Israel, and we don't want to be hated. So I did this survey a few times, and I just did it before this conference, and here is the result. What came out of this survey was that 59%, almost 60% of the Arab population say, yes, I would vote definite 20, 30%, and the rest probably. And I can say that there are many who are afraid to say that they're in favor of this. In the previous survey, I got similar results together. It was 66% approximately who said, yes, we would vote for that. But what we're seeing today in the Arab public is that the other 30% are forcing, even by violence, their views over the other 2/3 and are preventing them from doing that. And we haven't yet found the leaders who will say, let's do it, and that's because they're afraid and intimidated. And I'd like to conclude by saying that I had the honor on the eve of the previous elections. I met with 5 other experts, we were called, and we interviewed on the radio all the leaders, the future leaders of the State of Israel just before the elections. And when the turn of Ayman Uda, the head of the United Arab Party, the narrator said, hello, welcome, smiling, a very moderate person. And Ayman Uda said to him, I'm no moderate. I'm not moderate. Why do you think I'm moderate? And he came to me. I said, hello, and I'm nice to meet you. And I told him about my study. I said, why don't you head a party like that? So he yelled at me, loyalty? Loyalty to the state? That belongs to the Middle Ages. Today there's democracy. In other words, you can do whatever you like. So we still have a long way to go, but there are a lot of people who want to go in that better direction, and we need to do what's necessary to find peace amongst ourselves. And just a short time ago, I wrote a pamphlet about Israel in 2048, about what we want to see. We want to contribute to the future of Israel, so there'll be a place. It will be a place where our children and grandchildren will want to live, and they will choose it above any other place in the world. And what we need to do is build values and an economy and vision and planning and real estate and the development. But the condition before everything else is values. We need values, proper, respectful relations between one another. That's the basis for everything. Let's do it. Thank you.